Good afternoon and welcome to BCB Council's Facebook Live event today. My name's Drew Mellor. I'm the leader of BCB Council. I'm really pleased to be with you today. In a minute, we're going to introduce Councillor Mohan Iyengar and Sophie Ricketts, who is leading on our summer response. So we can actually have a session dedicated to a lot of the things around how we're unlocking and the summer events. So please get those questions in. Also, very happy to take any normal questions as well about the General Council. So put your questions in the different messaging forums. This is the second time we've actually gone out across Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So really extended platforms. So hopefully everybody who's joining us on either of those channels, any of those channels, really welcome. So thank you. Before we kick in and introduce Sophie and Mohan, I always start these sessions with a quick update in terms of where we are on COVID. So in terms of our numbers, we've got 226 per 100,000 case rates for COVID, which is high. It's increasing, quite quickly. So COVID is really quite prevalent in our community. Just to give some context, that has been up as high as 900. Per 100,000. It has been as low quite recently as in single figures. So by no means as high as we have been, but it is increasing. What is different, very different this time from previous surges, is the fact that we only have the last count 12 people in hospital across our Dorset hospitals, and that was up at over 600 previously. So it's really proving that the vaccination is working, which is great. So hugely encourage anybody to bring forward your second jabs if you haven't had them. Go and get your first jab, etc. This really is our way out of it. The message now is very much, COVID is going to be with us, so we've got to learn to live with it, which is one of the reasons why we're really pleased to be positively talking about things like, Festival Coast Live, backing the air show, so we can really make sure we move out of this confidently. And hopefully today's session with Sophie, Mohan and myself should, allow us to answer some questions on that. So now what I'll do, we're just about to introduce our other colleagues on this, and I think we're going to play a video first to talk about effectively our multi-agency centre. So look to that video, then I'll bring back Sophie and Mohan.
Hi, I'm Sophie and welcome to the Command Centre. From here, we coordinate our multi-agency response to what's happening on the ground. First of all, you can see our CCTV control centre with over 40 different cameras across our open spaces and our beaches. So we can see exactly what's going on at any one time, and we can also deploy resource directly to them. We also have our analysts who are looking at real-time data such as traffic flow, car parks, and also weather data, so we can predict when we're getting an influx of visitors. When we're busy and when we're scaled up, in here we've got a secure room for the police, so they will coordinate all of their policing resource on the ground alongside what we're doing. This is Frankie, she's our senior CSAS officer, and she coordinates our patrol teams on the ground dealing with antisocial behaviour. And then finally, again, once we're busy, we'll have missing children and the coordination of the response to that, as well as our RNLI partners, making sure that our water conditions are safe for our visitors. And that's everything.
Hello everyone, so I'm Sophie and I'm the Head of Seasonal Response, and I'm joining Cllr Iyengar and Cllr Mellor for this afternoon's questions.
And good afternoon everyone, I'm Mohan Iyengar, Cabinet Member for Seafront Tourism, Culture and Leisure. Really glad to take your questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview on our seasonal response plans just quickly before we open up to questions. As you may have seen in the press, we've allocated around 3.5 million this summer to an influx of visitors that we're expecting for a really busy summer season. Obviously, with COVID restrictions and the uncertainty around international travel, we are expecting another bumper summer. As a busy tourist resort in BCP, we do get visitors year on year. So what we've done is looking at our responses to be able to scale up what we have on a general year, but to scale that up ahead of expecting those visitors. We're taking a really data-led approach. So from the video, you can see that we've got data analysts that look at the data quite far and ahead, and then on the day as well to see where our visitors are heading, so we can make sure that we've got enough resource. And then we've scaled up things like our resource as well. So I'm happy to take any questions on the seasonal response and also our preparations for this weekend, because we are expecting it to be rather warm, and we are expecting visitors to come and enjoy our wonderful beaches and our open spaces.
Yeah, hello. Thanks, guys. So what we'll do then, I'll answer. I'll just go through some of the questions we've had already, and then we'll look forward to answering any further ones about normal things or our seasonal response. So, okay, we'll bring the guys back in as necessary. So we've got a question from Sarah Bates around Hamworthy. So Sarah's asking, why are Hamworthy residents strung out to dry with roadworks, flooding, nobody cares, etc. So Sarah, thanks for your question. All I can say is, look, the flooding was really distressing for a lot of people. We're collating all the data for that now so that we can, look at it ourselves, and also we need to supply that back up nationally. So we are collecting all the data on that. In terms of Hamworthy generally, I think we're starting to really try and bring forward a real improvement program, an investment program. So highlights of that are, we just had a big program around the paddling pool in Hamworthy Park. We look, hopefully that should be in a position to be opening soon, which would be great. There's two separate types of toilet blocks in Hamworthy we put investment programs into. We've got the investment in the power station coming up. So Sarah, really thank you for your question. There's a significant investment going. You've got 3 excellent ward councillors there in Mike White, Julie Bagwell and Dan Butt. So please work with them. We're working really closely with them. Thank you. Okay, so also got a question from Paul Draper around South West Water dumping raw sewage onto our beautiful coast. What action are you taking about this? Paul, yeah, really important and interesting question. We've got a big ambition around regeneration and delivering more affordable housing, and we very much can't do that if we're unable to have the infrastructure in place for that, and that does include sewage. So what we're doing, we're working really closely with water, the Environment Agency, and about where that is. Particular issue in around Paul Quay as well. So we are aware of it. We're working really hard, but yeah, and it's something we're definitely going to address. Got a question from Ray Nottage on LinkedIn about, are we aware of the Natural England project of diverting the projected coastal path and in doing so annexing freeholders' property and rights? Ray, thanks for your question, really important one. The quick answer is only recently. So, that is something we'll be looking into. And if you want to contact me, Ray, I believe you probably would have my email address, but I'll just put that up there now for everybody. So drew.mellor@bcpcouncil.gov.uk. By all means, follow up any of these questions with emails to myself or any of our team. Okay, so we've then by all means, guys, if you see a question in the comments bar that you'd like to take, please do so. We've got a couple of questions we had that came in before we started, so I'll just answer a couple of those now. So Anne-Marie Denny asked a question. What are you doing about Paul? It's a mess at the moment, effectively. Anne-Marie, thank you very much for the feedback. A lot is the answer. I think in terms of Paul Quay, we've got a program of work we're looking at. How we can really step that up for next next summer and also future years. So we're working really closely with the Paul Bid on that. We've got a significant program of work going with Paul Bid around our cleaner, greener, safer ambition. So Paul is actually going to be the trial this summer for our environmental project around how we're in cleanliness. So there's a big push around Paul and cleanliness for the opening up of the restrictions. And what we're doing now is working how we can extend that further. So how we can look at things like street furniture, the public realm improvements there, And what we've done as an administration is brought together a £50 million futures fund, which allows us to invest in infrastructure as on top of what we're doing with increasing cleaning services, etc. So a significant amount, Anne-Marie, but please, by all means, please keep in contact with us. Okay,
Drew, can I come in on the back of that? Yeah. Just on the Poole Museum as well, Anne-Marie. So, I'm sure you're very familiar with Poole Museum and Scaplan's Court next door to it, and the about £4 million project, and we approved that at Cabinet about 3-4 months ago. Consensus all around the houses. Not just councillors, but a wider group as well. And that's there to literally expand the space by more than doubling it within the museum and Scaplan's Court to really make it something more sort of, more of a sort of an absolute stellar venue, even more so than it is right now, so we can get those quality exhibitions, but more importantly, and maybe more, in keeping, with in the hearts of everyone on this call, is something more that can celebrate more fully things like Poole's maritime heritage and various other things to do with Poole's background as well. And we'll have more space to do that, and watch for news to come on this, but about £4 million of investment is going in there.
Amazing. It's really exciting. Sophie, we've got a question from Mark Noble about why did the video cover Bournemouth? What happened to Christchurch and Poole? Probably a good opportunity to perhaps just touch on, how it's a full response across, BCP in terms of our summer planning and working with partners.
Yes, thank you. The summer resilience response plans do cover all of BCP, so we've made significant enhancements across our entire 14.7 miles of beachfront, as well as in all of our open spaces. We coordinate out of central Bournemouth as a key sort of central location to be able to ensure that we've got suitable responses from Highcliffe all the way through to Sandbanks, and then also all the way through to Hamworthy, Lake Pier, those areas as well. So it is a fully comprehensive response that covers all of BCP. It's just coordinated out of central Bournemouth as a key location that we could pull together.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sophie. Okay, got a question from Steve Talamy about emergency ASB noise reporting and a phone number. So Steve, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to get that number up on this broadcast if we can. If not, we're making a commitment to follow up all of the questions that have been asked. So we'll certainly get that number to you and publish it, Steve. So thank you. Okay, so let me. And somebody just bringing that forward now, which is great, and then I'm sure somebody put that on screen. Okay, so SA Slocum has asked a question in respect to abuse and equality. We've seen last week football. What is BCP doing for training for councillors? Webpage training. It's a question about equalities, racism, etc. So SA Slocum, however your name is. One of the first things we did as an administration was brought forward and that number there is the out of hours number. I presume that's what we've just been asked for about noise complaints. So what we did, we brought forward a lead member for equalities because we wanted to make a real commitment to BCP being a very a modern, forward-thinking, fair, being fundamentally important place. So we've got a councillor with a remit purely around equalities. At the next cabinet meeting in early September, we're bringing forward a paper on equalities and effectively what we've achieved to date and where we want to go and what more we want to do on it. So I'd really look out for that paper if you can, because we're proud about what we're the stance we're making. That does include training to councillors. It does include training to our whole our whole staff base as well, and also looking at how we can improve fairness and equality throughout the conurbation. So absolutely important. We very much I do, and our council, the whole council stands with the England football team and the FA in terms of condemning the racist abuse that they saw. So thank you very much for the question. Mohan.
Yeah, Andrew, just a bit to add on the end there. By the way, I think if you looked at the composition of our cabinet, for instance, I think we look actually quite well in terms of diversity on that, certainly ethnic diversity. The other thing is that it's been probably one of the things about councils, not just our own, but equality is one of those things which is right at the end of the document. It's one of those sort of checklist items where how do we meet equalities and so on and so forth. And I think what's implicit, or more than implicit, in what Drew's saying is that by having the lead member there, we're trying to think about how right at the start of working of every single initiative that we've got on our day-to-day, how can we think about equalities in all their forms right at the beginning, not when, frankly, later on in the process when something has been thought through. And for instance, one of them, very relevant today, is about the seafront and things about accessibility, which I know I've had a few comments about in the past, and how, as a goal, how can we make the whole seafront much, much more accessible to people of all forms of kind of mobility and so on. That's just one example. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Mohan. Question for probably both of you at different angles on. We've got a question from Andrina Peter. Effectively, what are council doing to help residents who live near the beach and have to on-street park? Yeah, I'm sure we've put a question up. Mohan, you're a ward councillor for a beachfront ward, and Sophie, you're aware of what we're doing in terms of the highways management for across the summer. So, question about people on street parking and our general sort of summer response to beach parking. Either of you go ahead.
Okay, well, when I say we've done a lot, but on the other hand, you'll be the judge of that, Andrina, and it's quite a challenge, we have to say, because the roads are public highway. In a sense, sort of anyone can park on the roads unless there's restricted parking, resident spaces, and so on and so forth. What we've done is, I think we've learned the lessons. I know people say, do we learn lessons? Yes, we have. I think we have, because what's happened since the last couple of weekends we've had in particular is a considerable increase in the number of, they used to be called traffic wardens, they're now called civil enforcement officers, but we know what they are. A considerable increase in the number of those, and we will see ticketing. For the avoidance of any doubt, by the way, the ticket cap of £35 is set legally, nationally, and to be blunt, I'd much rather it was increased so that it was a sufficient deterrent for enough people and they think twice. But we are lobbying for that through our MPs, through Parliament. We'll try and get that increased. The second thing is, as well as those CEOs being much more active, as well, the tow trucks. Now, the tow trucks is a logistical difficulty because there's only so much you can do, and when there's congestion, there is congestion. But on the other hand, to have them prominently there, have more trucks, and have them actually towing sort of more actively is something that we've already seen. And I think, Sophie, if you would kindly just give us the latest stats on where the towing has actually taken place. The third thing is actually, as well as ticketing, having the CEOs much more active about bad parking and actually advising people where they can go to park more safely, to actually be a deterrent to bad parking. And I think also finally our signage has got a big role to play in this, because I feel our signage has in some quarters not been quite as as sort of proactive and in the right place as it can be, and we want to improve that as well. Okay, yes, Sophie.
Yeah, of course. So I can come in on some of the additional resources. So our civil enforcement officers have increased by 25% on last year's numbers. We've also got those tow trucks in key locations as a deterrent really early in the morning, so that they are available for their first tow, and so that people are aware that we have tow truck presence. Signage around towing has also increased quite considerably. So this last year we had 13 vehicles towed from sort of the middle of the summer period until the end of the summer period. This year alone, up until now, we've towed 14 vehicles and attempted to tow a further 6. Now, when I say attempted, that means that people have come back to their vehicles prior to us being able to remove that vehicle. But 14 vehicles towed already, given that we've had quite a considerable amount of bad weather, is really positive. So we've also increased our signage, and we are rolling out an additional park and ride centre. So that will run as of the 24th of July from the Civic Centre in Poole. We've got the one that's been operating in Kings Park for some time, and we've also increased signage to divert people to other car parks. So, for example, in Boscombe, we've got Hawkwood Road car park that can be utilised. We've got Avenue Road in Bournemouth Town Centre, and we've got a number of car parks sort of across the conurbation that aren't fully utilised at present. So the signage around that to divert people. The number for illegally parked vehicles is on the bottom. That covers all of BCP. It gives you various options dependent on where you live. So if you have got an issue with an illegally parked vehicle, we would recommend that you do report it, because our civil enforcement officers will be out in force ahead of a really busy summer season.
Yeah, thank you. And just to say, there's also sort of there's a question later on from Stu Smith, which effectively talks about this as well. So, Stu, I hope that's an answer to your question. From my perspective, one thing I'll say is I'm really pleased in terms of, you know, effectively where we started and our summer response, you know, it's significantly further forward than it was, you know, this time last year, because of the efforts of our team. But what we've done, and, you know, the guys on screen have done, you know, is now trying to leave no stone unturned in terms of, okay, it's improved from last year, but how can we improve it from, you know, a couple of weeks ago, the last time we were really busy. So it's that learning in terms of increased messaging and signage. You know, we're desperately keen to get more knowledge of the park and ride, you know, scheme out to make sure that's really well used as well. So please use that, you know, and keep feeding back in your feedback, because we're determined to keep making this better. Okay, I've got a sort of a comment from Andy Pearce around effectively antisocial behaviour and what we were talking about earlier. I actually disagree, you know, to some extent with what Andy's saying, really. The problem is from insufficient community policing and social welfare resources, and this Tory-led council want to do is put a sticking plaster on it. Where I disagree, I don't disagree that there's a problem, Andy, and you know, really glad that you raised it. I disagree in terms of the response, because what this administration has done is put significant extra, you know, investment and money into a resource, like, you know, we put an extra 240k into community policing. We're doing a lot of more partnership work with the police as well, and that's working really well. And at a national level, we put out, you know, the government's committed to funding over 20,000 extra police officers. So Andy, you know, thanks for your question, but I have a difference of view on you. Sophie, perhaps that's something you would like to sort of come in around the CSAS officers. Sophie.
Yeah, so part of my remit is our CSAS scheme. So we have increased our staffing levels quite considerably with our CSAS service over the last year. We're currently recruiting again at the moment for an additional officer, and we've got a few new officers starting. So our CSAS service covers our main town centre areas, but has the availability to be quite flexible as well. So they deal with street-related antisocial behaviour. They sit within the policing teams, and they're basically an extension of the neighbourhood policing service. So they've got PSPO powers as well as limited but targeted police powers too. So they're a really useful resource, and if you see them out and about in our town centres, they're always happy to say hello.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sophie, and yeah, really good work being done there. Okay, got a question from Sarah Jane Mika. What are we doing to address local people being priced out of the market, both in rents and house prices? I won't go through the rest of the question because I'm sure we can put it up on screen. So effectively, Sarah, really hugely passionate about this, because what we're not doing is standing around doing nothing and saying, you know, people are priced out, you know, and we know that they are. And just complaining about it. So we've come up with something called a big plan, and that's effectively how we can bring forward 15,000 new homes for local people, effectively 13,000 new jobs and 3 billion of investment. So we've brought forward ourselves a £50 million futures fund, which enables us to invest in infrastructure to get some of this stuff off the ground and make some of this stuff work. That includes viability and affordability. So Sarah, we're committed. We know we need to build more houses, build more homes. What we want to do, and our setup of our you know, nationally, you know, recognised and leading urban regeneration company recently, is around how we can use urban densification effectively. So how we can build, you know, get those numbers in terms of our town centres, which enables us to protect the green belt. So what we're trying to do is to make sure we're resourced to build significant number of new homes. What's absolutely fundamental to me, to us, and to this conurbation is our young people can stay here, can be a real part of the future here, and that means, you know, being able to both rent houses affordably and also then to get on a housing ladder at the right time as well. So Sarah, absolutely passionate about delivering on new homes and affordable housing, you know, in this community. Yeah, fine. Okay, fine. So by all means, I'll now look for some other questions. If anybody else wants to come in, Mohan or Sophie, if you've got anything you want to come in on, please do. While I find another question.
I'm quite happy to answer the questions on the toilets at Pool Quay. That's come up a couple of times.
Fantastic, Sophie.
So the toilets at Cllr have been closed for a little while. We have recently, this week, actually been open to be able to get them reopened by the people that own the building. So that gives us an enhancement in the Cllr toilets one end, and we've also reopened the toilets on the other end of the quay as well. So we have enhanced those. We've also done a lot of work to enhance our public toilets across the piece. So that's from a cleansing perspective to make sure that we are compliant from COVID side, but also the opening times. So we're at summer opening now. Our seafront toilets are open from 7 till 11 and can be open later if we need to. And a lot of our open spaces toilets are open longer, and they are also increased from a cleansing provision too. So we've done as much as we possibly can to bring in additional toilets where required into certain areas as well. So there's a big improvement on sort of where we have been in previous years.
Yeah, so that's both in terms of the quality, because we've invested in the maintenance program, but I'm going to do a lot more, and also the quantity as well. So we will certainly be doing more on that. Got a question from Sally Piper in terms of SEND children, and there's a few questions, Sally, you've dropped in. So I'll talk about on SEND more generally. So that's special educational needs children. So Sally, this is a real important area for improvement for BCP Council. So I think it's acknowledged that the current provision isn't strong enough, and that's something that we came in on the 1st of October, and we're really keen to do something about. What we did do in the budget round in February was bring forward a £10 million fund effectively around how we could placements effectively. So how we can put extra capital money into making sure there are more placements in localities and in schools. There's a big inclusion element to that, Sally. So we feel that more children should be able to be in their local school. There's a real benefits to being in your local community rather than have to travel significant and be out of your community with your friendship groups. So we're trying to put the money in place to make sure we can build the school placements, and schools can deliver SEND services. Sally, you've asked for a meeting about it. We'll just put my email address up on it again. By all, drew.mellor@bcpcouncil.gov.uk. But by all means, we can arrange for somebody to sit down with you and to discuss any individual concerns. But just to summarise, we're well aware that we need to do more. We're putting more money into it, putting more resource into it, and we're absolutely determined that we're going to do more. We put an extra £7.5 million in the budget for children's services generally, and now we need to really step up in terms of the results we're getting there. Okay, brilliant. Just a quick one. I do appreciate this. Alison Cantor, I'd like to thank the bin men in my area. They're friendly and helpful. I've said it before. I believe our bin men are absolutely fantastic. When we're talking about isolation at the start of a pandemic before, these people are some people who actually, really, are the lifeblood of our communities, and some of the only people see, on a regular basis. And I've personally seen, from some of my neighbours who are, a bit more isolated, how well they've been. So, Alison, thank you, and I echo that question. Hannah Dixon, I'm just going to try and do a few quick fire questions because we're getting towards 1:30. We are going to open this up a little bit longer today because we've got multiple channels. We're getting lots more questions in, so we're not just going to cut off after half an hour. So Hannah Dixon, has homeschooling become more popular since COVID began, and what support is there for parents who wish to uptake this? So Hannah, yes, homeschooling has become, well, actually, I think it's been more popular, or everybody has had to homeschool at certain points. That's definitely true, but it has become more popular, and there is support for people. We still very much encourage people to work out what's best for their child and to be in mainstream education. But Hannah, there is support available, and we have a responsibility as a local authority to make sure every child is achieving quality education. So by all means, any particular questions, come back to me on that. Okay, so Jackie Streeter, you've noticed fibre being installed in part of Bournemouth, but it stops on the border of Poole. Yes, so effectively we've got City Fibre coming in across the conurbation, and I believe it might get the numbers slightly wrong, but it was about a £60 million of investment they announced recently, and that is across the conurbation. So I think the work initially started in Bournemouth, but it's now coming across the conurbation. I know that's moving into Poole now as well. Okay, right. So guys, have anybody seen any other questions? By all means, come in while I scan some of the questions.
Yeah, parking on the zigzags, by the way, outside schools, that is a council thing, and that's one where the civil enforcement officers will be there, but do report it. I think the numbers came up earlier. It is a council matter.
Great.
There is also a question about developing the app to make it easier to report illegally parked vehicles. That is something that we're currently exploring. We're looking at rapid app developments if feasible. However, we will be looking at a reporting system that will look at coming into play before the summer holidays starts, to enable people to report directly, basically effectively directly into the MAC, so we can task resource directly out to issues in quick time. So watch this space for that one.
Great, thank you. Okay, got a question from Alison Cornter, I think that is. Will BCP be suggesting masks are worn in public transport and in shops, or is that down to each company? So Alison, thanks for the question. It's really important. It gives us an opportunity to talk about what is changing, what isn't changing. So from Monday, most of the restrictions are falling away, which means that mask wearing won't be mandatory as it has been before. We're seeing in certain instances, transport companies like Transport for London will be requesting them to be used. It is a matter for the individual company, effectively, what they want to use. What we're being clear on is a message saying you've got to take personal responsibility to weigh up your own risk and to try and protect others, but also the fact that we've got to get to a situation where we can live with COVID going forward. So Alison, it's not up for us to say we need to make masks mandatory. We actually don't have the ability and the power to do that, but it's that messaging around taking personal responsibility, we're trying to facilitate how our economy and our health system can return to some element of normality and living with COVID. So thank you. Okay, I've got a question from. We've got a few questions that came in before we came in about grass cutting from Jeanette Hesselden, particularly, but there are a couple of other questions as well. And it's around cutting grass verges. So while I'm answering that, guys, please by all means find a question to answer or something you want to say, and then I'll bring you in after this. So you might well be aware we're running a trial until September, where we are trying to cut less of the grass verges in terms of increasing biodiversity. So we've declared a climate and ecological emergency, and as part of that is our biodiversity response. Better for bee populations and other biodiversity. So we're trialing not cutting grass verges, in some areas to allow those to grow up. Or allowing wild grass to grow, and we just cut the nearest part of it. And what we're doing is doing that till September as a trial. We're getting quite a lot of feedback saying, well, actually, that doesn't fit with what we're talking about in terms of bringing pride back into our town centres. So you might remember we put a significant amount of money in terms of in street cleaning, particularly in Christchurch, but now in a town centres in Bournemouth and Poole, where we're trying to effectively get much cleaner and safer town centres and places. The reason we're doing this is not for cost cutting in terms of the verges. It's absolutely to do with biodiversity. What I'm asking to do, and I have asked to do, is us to review those instances where we're getting significant objection before the September deadline for the trial, to see if there's things we need to step up in the summer and actually end some of these trials early. But we are really positive about the fact that if managed properly, an element of allowing wild grass and wildflowers could be a real part of our response to biodiversity. So please feedback your thoughts on it, whether it's positive or negative, where you're seeing it working well or not. Sophie, I believe you're coming in.
Yeah, there's a question from Gordon Ferguson on skateboarders in the square, and a follow-up from Hannah Dixon around e-scooters. So two separate approaches here. Skateboarders in the square, our CSAS team do engage with, and they do address if they are causing antisocial behaviour or they're skating in a manner that's likely to cause harassment, alarm, and distress to the public. So that is engaged with. They've also been doing work with external parties on suitable locations for skateboarding. So that is something that we've got in development. When it comes to electric scooters, there's two elements of electric scooters. There's the barrel scooters, and then there is the private e-scooters. private e-scooters are illegal, and the police have a scheme around this to ensure that they are warning people who are riding them, and then also they have powers of seizure, and they have been seizing scooters recently, and you may have seen on the police Facebook social pages that they have been doing days of action around this, and we will continue to do that through the summer holidays, especially down our seafronts in our town centres when they are busy. The Beryl scooters are restricted during the summer on the seafront locations, but also Beryl are really keen to work with us and work with the community on reporting. So I would encourage anybody that does see a Beryl scooter acting in a manner or being ridden in a manner that is antisocial to report that through the Beryl website to Beryl, citing the date, the time and the locations, because those scooters are GPS tracked.
Can I just come to Angela Ridland, just on the pool, the car park on Pool Quay that you're referring to? That's a private land, a private operator. So it sounds like you've had an experience, and I've had a small number of these similar ones as well. We say, come on, Paul, sort this out. Okay, first of all, like, in a sense, we're not, we don't run or control the car park to be able to, in a sense, be hands-on with that. There are plenty of others nearby, not too far away. The one sort of at the bottom end of the high street, sort of around the back where the Slug and Lettuce is, the one there, which is the New Orchard, Old Orchard one, and then there's a few others a little bit further away. So we're not. We can always do with more parking, but we've got plenty of other sites on the lower high street there. But no, what you say, actually, probably conversation will happen probably after this with the operator there. But thank you for it.
Brilliant. Just seeing some comments coming in around my answer on the Verge's question. So just to be clear, absolutely nothing to do with cost cutting. We're not expecting it to make any savings ultimately, and we're not committed to carry on not doing it until next summer. We're going to wait and see what the trial is. What we are doing is spending a significant amount of extra money on cleaning up our town centres and other areas. For instance, we put a significant amount of money levelling up. Christchurch didn't have the same level of service street cleansing as Bournemouth and Poole, so we immediately levelled it up, and we're putting a lot of money in terms of how we're actually going to do cleaner and greener. So it's absolutely nothing to do with cost cutting. It's absolutely to do with climate emergency. We are 100% committed to achieving pride in our town centres and our conurbation. I've got a question from Greg Danks on LinkedIn. So great, you're using LinkedIn, it's working. What are BCP doing on carbon footprint or using big 4x4s on the beach, shrinking roads, etc.? So I'll answer the question more specifically, Greg, in terms of carbon footprint. So we have signed up to a climate and ecological emergency. What we did in the last month's cabinet paper is we doubled the amount of money we put into. So we had a really good end to last year financially. So we were able to report a £5 million. We meant put in extra into reserves. And so what we've done is in year, away from the budget, we've actually invested in some key areas. One of the areas we did that was around our climate change response. So we've doubled the amount of money we put in February. So we were bringing forward a range of carbon reduction strategies. So what we're looking to do in the autumn, Greg, is on top of that, is bring forward a hopefully more detail on our capital fund, effectively where we'll be able to fund some more climate reduction projects. That doesn't specifically answer your question about using big 4x4s on the beach. I'm not sure if Sophie or Mohan would want to add anything on that, but I can certainly take it away and we look at our fleet more generally. We have moved a lot of our fleet across to, I always get hydrogen fat, so we're trying to, and we're hydrogenated vegetable fat effectively on a lot of our fleet, and we're looking at different ways we can use our wider fleet in that regard as well. So we are trying to do everything we can on that, and we are committed to our climate goals. Does anybody, Sophie or Mohan, any questions you'd like to, while I scan for the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, so there's a question.
Go on, Sophie.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Rachel Moore. So Rachel says that it's a shame that we can't increase the parking fines. I think we'd all agree with you with that one. Obviously, yeah, that is a central government decision, but we would completely agree with you. But reducing the littering on the beaches, so that's something that we have really considered this year. If you've been down to the beaches recently, you will have seen a significant amount of additional signage around making sure that people are aware of what they should and shouldn't be doing across all the behaviours. We do have an increase in our ranger resource and an increase in our CSAS resource, who are trained to issue fixed penalty notices. The issue around litter enforcement is that the officers need to see that litter being dropped, and then they need to see that litter being left as well. So on a beach on a busy day, that is a challenge. We've also increased our bin capacities. So there are an additional 400 bins along the seafront. We have 648 bins along our 14.7 miles of coastline, and we've also increased our collection capacity as well. So when you have got a busy day, it is a challenge to get a refuse vehicle down the seafront. So we've also included manual collections there too. So our bin crews and our cleansing crews do an absolutely fabulous job. Our tractors and our surf rakes are out at 3 o'clock in the morning cleansing our beaches. We are hopeful that our visitors do respect our beaches as we do. But the combination of comms and enforcement, you will definitely see this summer. Okay.
Just can I? Yeah, can I on that? Yeah. Just on the littering, by the way. Let's nail this one. The one about sort of fining people for littering. As Sophie said, it's actually fiendishly difficult in law because you've actually got to see the person drop it and consciously walk away as if they intended to leave it. And so actually, the burden of proof around that is actually quite high. The signage needs to be powerful. We could increase the signage, but it's pretty strong already, I've got to say. I think, sadly, I think there is a national epidemic of dropping litter. Very, very sad that is the case. So what we've got to do is, as Sophie said, with the bin provision, with the signage, with the reinforcement of the messages, and frankly, with cleaning it up assiduously every night, every morning. That's how we'll get through all of this. Back of all of this, by the way, we've got to do something with packaging. The amount of packaging and the amount of stuff that people are carrying with this, that is a longer term solution, but that's one I'm particularly passionate about. I'll come to another question actually, which is about signage. Is it Brigitte? Is it? I apologise if I've mispronounced that. Just about the signage into Hamworthy. Well, I suppose there's two bits to Hamworthy: east side, which is east of the Wriggler Road there, which obviously people can get into, and then west of the Wriggler where they can't, and it's the Upton way, of course, isn't it? There is some signage, but I'll take your point, which is maybe is there not enough of it? The diversion is marked, but thank you for your question, and maybe there is something there that we need to improve upon. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I think what we'll do, we'll call that a wrap there. And I'll come to Sophie and Mohan if there's anything they want to finally say in a minute. Just a couple of things before I do that. It's been particularly on the comments around SEN, so special educational needs. Yeah, by all means, I'm really keen to hear about it. So please do contact me, and we'll arrange to meet with the right people. There's also a comment from Sun Child around domestic violence, and Sun, I won't go into this now, but it's desperately important that you do raise that, and so please by all means contact me, and we'll make sure that is that we're doing all we can to support you and liaise with the police as well. So Sun, please do contact me. Okay, Sophie, Mohan, anything you'd like to say? We're about to have a really busy weekend, hopefully a great weekend. I think our hotels are at 90% of capacity. Yeah. So, I just for me on that, I'll say if anybody's got other people coming down, going, forward the rest of the summer, book now. Get people to book early because we are going to be busy. But on this weekend or summer generally, Mohan and then Sophie.
Yeah. Just going forward. Look, we put a lot of arrangements in place. Sessions like this are so useful because, frankly, people hold our feet to the fire and say, "Well, you've missed this, you've missed this, you've missed this." Look, we are all ears. We can't get to everything all in one go. We do get to stuff. I hope people are seeing that. And the stuff that's more difficult, we are working on it patiently because we want people to really enjoy being here, visiting here, residing here, and don't feel they're being taken advantage of. And you'll be the judges of that. But we are constantly on this, trying to correct mistakes and trying to make it better. That's our earnest sort of promise to you. But thank you for the feedback.
And you want to add, Sophie?
Yeah, I just add that we are expecting a busy weekend. The weather is going to be glorious, and we would love you all to be able to enjoy our beaches and our open spaces. So plan ahead for your journeys, use sustainable transport where you can, and remember the slogan, protect, respect, rejoice.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
Fantastic. Yeah, and look on our website for things like Festival Coast Live, you know, so we can enjoy a lot of the stuff that happens beyond the beach. So we've got a really a whole summer-long program of events. So festivalcoastlive.co.uk, Twitter, Instagram. You know, have a look at that, and you know, there's a lot of good stuff that we'll be doing. Thank you everybody who engaged with. Hopefully, it's useful. We've extended the time of this. One thing that'd be great is we try and have more themed events like this. So by all means, any ideas on topics you'd like us to discuss or people you'd like to see on this, please let us know. But Sophie, Mohan, thanks for all you're doing. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for their time, and see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.